And then I found keto. And I started pretty dirty keto. And the thing I initially noticed was the mental clarity that I had, and that my energy level didn't go up and down anymore. It was very, very steady. So it resolved a lot of my anxiety, and I had no depression that I could discern. Hi, I'm Michele Happe. I am 75, still working, and I work now as a health coach, metabolic coach, recovery coach, mindfulness coach, just general coaching. I am a retired licensed drug and alcohol counselor. I am level 1 autism spectrum. And within autism, there are a lot of comorbidities, most of which, not all, but most of which I have had. So I want to talk about those first, and then I want to talk about the benefits of being on the spectrum and how my eating and changing my eating had such a profound effect on that. So autism cannot be treated because we're born with autism. In terms of the comorbidities that I've had is one, of course, addiction. I got into the addiction and recovery field because I had my own sobriety. I've been sober since 1980. I have other addictions too, and this is very common for people on the spectrum to have eating disorders. And the reason I have figured out that we have eating disorders is we use food addictively as a way of regulating, because oftentimes with sensitivities, you become dysregulated. And that's my whole lifetime. I mean, when I was born, I always felt like I was different than everybody else. And I didn't really like hanging out with people my own age. I liked hanging out with my mom's friends. And I became very early in life. I can remember being 5 and listening to a conversation that my mom and my mom was a major intellectual, that she and her friends were having, and just thinking, oh, this is so interesting. And so I always just didn't quite fit in. In terms of my own addiction issues, definitely food. I've been anorexic. My bottom weight was 107. I think at that time this is funny, it was in the 70s, the 1970s, and I put myself on a 400 calorie diet. And I remember I was working at the women's clinic in LA, doing abortion counseling at that time. And I was peeing on ketone strips to make sure I was in ketosis and that I would lose weight, because not only did I have anorexia, I was also obese at age 9, and went with my dad, who was also obese, also very much on the spectrum. Went with him to the doctor and got diet pills and lost 40 pounds at that time. And then the rest of my food addiction was gaining, losing, not understanding why it was so hard. I got at one point, and this isn't a vegan diet, I ate nothing but fruits and vegetables. So I was always trying, and that caused in me a resurgence of my general anxiety that I had ever since I was a tiny little girl. I was attached to my mom. I didn't want to be away from her. As I grew older, I started having panic attacks when I was in college, in community college, the first part of my education. And those were awful, to the point where it caused depersonalization, where everything felt really, really strange to me. And at the time, I was tutoring geology, because I am, as you can probably tell, a bit of a geek. And that was the only place I felt really sane, was that when I was in the geology lab helping others. When I was on the fruit and vegetable diet, I really developed dysthymia, which is a low-level constant depression. I had a lot of suicidal ideation. My boyfriend had to hold the door because I was always threatening to jump out. I was a mess in my late teen, early 20 years. And even in spite of that, I was a great student. I got awards in community college. I studied psychology, eventually got my master's in psychology. And when I was 23, I was teaching psychology at the community college I went to, Pasadena City College. When I was getting my master's degree, I took a psych testing course. And so we got tested, and I learned my IQ was pretty high. But I also learned I scored very high in alienation, to the point where the teacher called me in to her office because she was concerned about me. And I figured that really goes with my feeling of just not fitting in because of my autism. I ended up getting sober. Not that I was a terrible, terrible alcoholic, but I knew that if I continued to drink, that I would have a problem with it. But then I had other addictions. I had love addiction, codependency. I did drugs. I hung out with a lot of drug addicts. I was just out there a lot. So that basically covers most of my comorbidities, my mental issues around being autistic, and also being a total food addict. My favorite breakfast when I was a kid was graham crackers with chocolate syrup and milk. And my mom was Italian, big pasta maker. I loved all the carbs and sugar, very much a sugar addict too. I started my private practice in 1987 and was still dealing with myself and who I was, and had no idea that I was on the spectrum until I was in my 60s. But I did all kinds of different dieting. I did Metafast, and actually got certified as a health coach through them, which really didn't work. It really messed up my blood work to do Metafast. So I abandoned that. And then I found keto, and I started pretty dirty keto. And the thing I initially noticed was the mental clarity that I had, and that my energy level didn't go up and down anymore. It was very, very steady. So it resolved a lot of my anxiety, and I had no depression that I could discern. Today, the keto story is a story in itself. So I started with dirty keto, and then, and that was very, very helpful, especially for all my mental stuff. I still had weight on. It was kind of hard to lose the weight. And then COVID came. I got COVID, and 3 months after COVID, I had a perforated colon. So I guess the infection went into my colon, and I had to get a foot of my colon removed. And that was really, really tough. I still suffer from long COVID. I have neuropathy and all kinds of things. But I was told at the time that I had, because after the surgeries, I've had 3 surgeries, one where they took out the part of my colon, another where they reconnected me because I had a bag for a while, and then the third was to repair all of my incisional hernias that I had. So I still have manifestations of that issue, but I was told, because I started having small bowel obstruction because of the connection, and I was told I had to go on low fiber, which really freaked me out. So I gave up fiber, which means I stopped eating fruit and vegetables at that time, but I was still making my own, like almond bread and having some carbs. And then when I got my blood work done, expecting great results, I came up what my doctor called mild pre-diabetic. So my A1C was like 8.5 and or 5.8, sorry. And my fasting blood sugar was 108, hovering around there. And that wasn't good enough for me. I learned from watching all the YouTube videos I watched from all these wonderful doctors like Ben Bickman and Eric Westman and those kind of people, that I really wanted to get out of this pre-diabetic thing, because I learned that pre-diabetes does damage to us. And it drives me crazy that doctors say, oh, if you're below 7, that's fine. I'm like, oh my God, it's not fine. So a year ago, I became carnivore. And just a few weeks ago, I had my yearly blood work done. So just to tell you how successful this was, my previous blood glucose was 108. I was now 76. I had my doctor do fasting insulin because I think that's important. Previous, it was 8.5. It was now 2.5. And my A1C previously was 5.8, and it's still 5.8, which I found interesting because I've also learned that oftentimes when you're really healthy metabolically, your red blood cells live longer and can be glycated more. So A1C, for those of us with this metabolic system, often isn't as valid as it could be. And my lipids, I only look at the ratio because I have super high LDL and freaks my doctor out, but I think she's coming around. My ratio is 1.9, which I think is pretty good. But the other factor, and this is complicated, I'm old, I'm 75, so I'm also aging and dealing with aging issues. And that is challenging, but okay. Because when I read Chris Palmer's book, I have his book and I have his audiobook. He's my hero. He talks about the multidisciplinary approach. It's not all food. One of the primary challenges I had with keto was what I mentioned before, still being as a pre-diabetic, and that really concerned me. I didn't have any keto flu. I just transitioned really nicely into that. I didn't have, I think it's part of my autism. I like to eat the same thing every day. It doesn't bother me. I don't have to have variety. And it was so wonderful for me initially I have never had a hangry moment again since getting into ketosis. So I had all these benefits with all of my mental stuff and feeling so much better and having good energy that I didn't have that many challenges. Since I'm on the spectrum and I'm very familiar with autism, if somebody with autism came to me, how would I deal with them? And I do autism coaching also. So a lot of people come to me wanting help with that. And always the first thing I mention is metabolic health and how having metabolic ill health just makes autism seem like a disorder, which it really isn't in my view. And I do, one challenge in my work, which is a big one, is many people who would greatly benefit from being in ketosis absolutely refuse. And my response is usually, well, as long as you're willing to take the consequences for your actions, then we can continue working on other things. But it is frustrating for me because of all my own personal benefits that I've achieved. My son and my granddaughter think I'm nuts for eating the way I do. But that's okay too. I don't have trouble with a house full of all kinds of processed foods. I just eat my eggs, my cheese, and my meat and fat, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But a lot of people, they don't want to give up their wine. They don't want to give up their sweets. And the other benefit that ketosis brings, especially for compulsive overeaters, is you just are not hungry. The hunger goes away. I have had a number of clients who were very interested and went into ketosis, mostly doing, below 20 total grams a day, who have had, it's just so gratifying, who have had remarkable results in terms of weight loss and feeling better, and which enables, because I work on multiple levels with people, like a lot of people who are early sober, I always recommend consider ketosis. And sometimes that comes later in sobriety. Sometimes it comes initially. But that's the funnest part of my work is and I'm always happy. Like I'm always telling people, look, text me anytime. If you need help, I'll help you. I help friends for fun and for free to do this because I'm like a cheerleader.